Caribbean Innovation Ventures. My name is Sonja Salser, and today I have the privilege to be interviewing Sheldon Gilbert, who is the CEO and founder of Proclivity Media. Welcome to Caribbean Innovation Ventures. How are you doing today?
I'm doing very well, Sonja. Thank you so much for having me. Despite the Arctic front that we have here in New York, we're managing. And it's ironic because I just came back from St. Lucia about 2 weeks ago, so that's even trickier to even manage as well, going from 85 degrees to 19 degrees. So.
Yes. One extreme to the next.
Exactly.
So yes, you mentioned that you were in St. Lucia. I haven't had the privilege to go to St. Lucia's yet, but if myself or any of the audience would like to go to St. Lucia, what is the one thing that they should do down there?
But the one thing is that the country actually has a World Heritage Site. It's called the Pitons. The Pitons are these two mountains, and what makes them unique, Sonja, is that for most islands in the world, you know, there are two types of islands: the coral islands or the volcanic islands. In the case of the volcanic islands, the summit, the highest point of the island, tends to be in the middle, right? Unlike in this case, these two mountains are literally right on the beach. It's rare in the world that you actually have two massive mountains, two peaks literally right on the beach. And so you should definitely check out the Pitons. They're actually in the southern part of the island, and it's actually now a big celebrity destination. Matt Damon just got married there, a bunch of different things. So I'm not too thrilled about some of the environmental impact of that, but nonetheless, you should definitely see that. The other one I would say is every Friday in certain villages that are centered around the fishing industry, they have these local street fairs where everyone's dancing, and there's music, and there's lots and lots of amazing fish to eat at night.
Awesome. Okay, well, I definitely have to go there for sure. Yeah. So the other question is, I know you had some good food down there. So tell me, what's your favorite dish from the island of St. Lucia?
So we have this thing in St. Lucia. I guess it's sort of our national dish, if you will, but certainly when my mother makes it, I stop everything and I make sure I have it. In fact, when I go to these hotels, they also know that I'm there. And their chefs will actually make this when I'm there. But we have this thing called fried bakes, which is flour, as you know, that's fried, right? It's like a donut, if you will, but it doesn't have a hole in the middle. But it's not sweet. It's fried flour called fried bakes, and we have that with saltfish.
Yes.
Which is like herring a little bit, with some minced up cucumber salad with some black pepper. And with this thing called cocotie, which is basically, it's hot chocolate, but it's thicker with some flour and some cinnamon and nutmeg. I should stop talking about it right now.
Oh my gosh, yes. It's right. Tasty. Good. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
Now, Sheldon, you are what I would consider a powerhouse from the Caribbean. You have been featured in Business Week. You've been featured in the New York Times. You've been on CNBC. And you're a sought-after speaker, etc. Tell us a little bit about your background. Where did you go to school, etc.?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for those very kind words. I appreciate that. In terms of my background, and I always bring up St. Lucia, I think it's so important. The fact that, you know, being from the Caribbean, I think it's an important aspect of my degree to which I try and work really hard, and my level of sort of creativity. I think a lot of it stems from the immigrant experience, because when you're an immigrant, you're being resourceful. And then when you're being resourceful, you also are, by definition, being an entrepreneur. That's what entrepreneurship is all about. But in terms of my formal background, came to America when I was about 7 years old, had the good fortune of getting a scholarship from a program called Prep for Prep. I went to the Horace Mann High School, a private high school in New York City with national renown. And then I got a scholarship to Yale. And then at Yale, my background is in molecular genetics. Actually, the degree is molecular biochemistry, biophysics. So did that. And then I deferred graduate school in computational genomics to start the company years ago. So background in science, but hopefully a career in learning how to think critically. And make mistakes quickly and learn as quickly as you can how to navigate past them. So.
Wow, hence my statement, a powerhouse from the Caribbean.
Oh, thanks.
So tell me in layman's terms about Proclivity Media. What problem are you trying to solve? Who are your customers, etc.?
Yeah, so I think that there is a very common problem that we are trying to solve in very fundamental ways, which is or rather there's a fundamental problem that we're trying to solve, and we think in innovative ways, which is that nearly every company out there in the world has a singular challenge of trying to get an existing customer to either buy more or having an entirely new customer buy for the first time. So we help our clients drive incremental sales by effectively marketing to their existing customer base or acquiring new customers to buy their products. And our clients include companies like JetBlue or Barney's or the NFL and soon Johnson & Johnson and others. And so these companies, whether they're having people buy more handbags or tickets to Jamaica or St. Lucia or Trinidad, or donating to your political campaign or to the World Wildlife Fund, you're trying to make the customer transact. We do so, Sonja, by virtue of taking all of our clients' data. We take all their offline retail point of sale data. We take all their mobile data, all their website data, all this high volume, unstructured data, of which there are terabytes and rather exabytes of that data. And we help them actually quickly synthesize that data to predict for every customer what the customer is going to buy, when they're going to buy it, at what price point. And our pricing model is quite interesting. We actually don't get paid by our clients until we actually make the customer actually buy the product. So we help deliver relevant targeting, whether it's display advertising, email marketing, all sorts of ads, mobile ads, and we don't get paid until the customer actually buys the product. So we use all of our predictive algorithms, which we've patented, to actually predict that the customer is going to buy at a certain price point. If we get it wrong, we lose money. If we get it right, we make money. So we actually literally take on all this economic risk because we have a pretty accurate way of predicting people's shopping patterns and consumption patterns down to how much money they're actually going to spend doing those things. So that's what we do. It's performance marketing.
Got it. And tell me, why the name Proclivity?
Yeah, well, as the name suggests, that's exactly what we're doing. We're trying to predict people's proclivities or their predilection or their penchant for doing certain things. It turns out that one of the reasons why I sort of created the company and the algorithms based on this, which I developed, was I realized that our behavior is actually quite predictive. We're not, our behavior is really not that random for the most part. And so we all have proclivities, and the engine and the algorithm's entire focus is trying to predict and understand people's proclivities to do certain things, whether it's to buy a certain genre of music or to donate to a certain organization.
Got it. And what started you on this entrepreneurship journey?
Well, I mean, again, I think I lived in a household where I wasn't sort of the classic kid who had a lemonade stand outside of the front lawn. We didn't have a front lawn. And in my neighborhood, you don't want to be outside when I was a kid, necessarily selling lemonade, right? Grew up in the hood. But that said, I at a very early age, I understood from my parents the notion of being very, very resourceful with having very, very limited resources. And that really is at the epicenter of entrepreneurship, is being able to see the answer around the corner when not all the pieces are available to you. So, early age, I had to work for everything. My parents worked very, very hard. The work ethic came from there. Not to mention the incredible creativity. And, I grew up in a household where St. Lucia, we knew we had 2 Nobel laureates. We probably have more Nobel laureates per capita than anywhere else in the world. So Derek Walcott for literature, Sir Arthur Lewis for economics. So I grew up in a household where we had to be erudites. We had to think. We had to be scholars and entrepreneurs and athletes and all sorts of things. And so that I think I never thought, I was never afraid of taking risks, because by virtue of coming to this country at that time, illegal, right, and poor, it was the ultimate risk. And so when I saw that was possible, everything was possible. And that's very important, because you need to have that unrelenting ambition to succeed.
You're right. And so specifically in starting Proclivity, what challenges have you faced and how did you overcome them?
Yeah, well, I mean, they're always the classic challenges that any startup has. One, how do you get capital? Do you have a paying client? And if so, how much are they paying you? Will that be able to support the operations? If you need to go out and raise capital, do you raise debt capital? Do you raise equity capital? It's challenging to raise that capital. It's also challenging when you go out and start your company. So like I started around 2007, early 2008. we were in the middle of a financial crisis. Not many people were spending money. In fact, people were losing jobs. So how do you don't anticipate that in your business plan, right? You don't ever say, I'm going to go start a company during the midst of a massive economic recession. And so there's that market activity, competitive activity, hiring talent. It's extraordinarily hard to find the right talent across the board. And particularly early stage, you need to find other people who have the entrepreneur-like mentality, but want to apply that working for your venture and not theirs, right? So it's establishing that right culture at the time. People who have the right intestinal fortitude, that if things go sideways, that they're there with you. They're going to hunker down. They're going to stay in the foxhole. And they're going to figure it out with you. And that's very hard to find people who are willing to do that. But when you do, it can be magical. So there are those natural challenges that, all the above. We experienced all of those challenges.
Wow. And so during these challenging times, how do you stay motivated? Do you have a mentor?
I don't have an explicit mentor. I mean, I think I draw on different people at different points in time. Right now, my biggest inspiration is my 2-year-old daughter. And so, so she inspires me in many ways, and I mean that even in a very literal sense. My daughter asks questions that are so profound in their simplicity, which is exactly what I think every entrepreneur needs to always be doing, and saying, hey, why are we doing that? We lose sight of asking those simple questions, and sometimes people lose sight of asking questions because they feel they're nervous about making those questions seem so simplistic, but those are critical, right? Those are like, why are we computing the data that way? Why can't we use this function instead of that function? Well, we never thought about that. Okay, maybe we'll run faster. So it's those things that are important. I think also the most important thing is passion. You need to have unyielding passion for what it is that you're doing. It'll carry you through the very, very dark times, and there will be several of those. And so if you don't fundamentally believe in your idea, I mean, at times I was willing to mortgage the whole house 5 times over because I believed in it so much. Or you go without paying yourself sometimes because you believe in it fundamentally. And that's what really tests how resolute you are in that idea. If you're not willing to mortgage your house with the idea, you probably shouldn't. It may not be worth it. But I also believe fundamentally in the idea. I believe that, yes, 1 + 1 can equal 3 sometimes. And I saw the magic in the numbers that we're doing. The math is unassailable. So I always knew it would work. And thankfully, we've been able to ride those storms, and it's working very well, and we're scaling. So it's good.
Excellent. So what advice specifically would you give to Caribbean entrepreneurs or anyone who's in the Caribbean and want to be an entrepreneur, whether it's in the Caribbean or coming to America, etc.?
Well, I don't know if there's something specific or particular about being from the Caribbean per se. What I will say, though, is I do think there's something to be said about being an immigrant. And whether you come from Poland or Croatia or Barbados, there's something to be said about that. You've physically have transposed yourself from one environment, which is far more familiar, into a new environment where things are sometimes upside down and completely orthogonal to what your experiences have been before in the past. So that transposition is very important. Your new perspective that you have in your new environment is important. And if you're coming to a new country, as many people from the Caribbean are doing, with limited resources sometimes in big urban centers, thankfully, we are typically in households where education and creativity is celebrated. And I always draw upon that. And so for me, implicitly, my environment at home, whereas when I was in, so my parents weren't concerned. I'll never forget this. When I was telling my parents, I said, listen, Mom, Dad, when I at Yale, I want to be a zoologist. My parents were like, no. You be a doctor, lawyer, engineer, right? That's the classic threads, right? And so I said, look, I'm not sure if I want to do medical school anymore. And they were so panicked. But when I said, I want to start my own startup, they naturally supported that, which seems strange, because essentially what they're saying is like, listen, if you want to dedicate yourself to your own vision and you're willing to work really hard at that, we support that, because it's exactly what we've been doing. We had a vision of coming here, and we dedicated ourselves towards that. And so they readily, so I'd say draw upon that. That's one. Now I draw upon the Caribbean in a different way for a different form of inspiration. It is where I go back to get centered. I mentioned I just came back from St. Lucia. In fact, I actually want to bring the entire company down there to spend a week there doing some innovation. But there's something to be said about going there. I mean, that part of the world that we're from is majestic.
Yeah.
And being on an island and the serenity and seeing turquoise colored water that's warm and the weather and amazing food and health and so forth. And so it's where I go back to get centered, and it clears my thinking. And so I draw upon that for that reason. And actually I want to think about ways of helping those areas become part of the innovation economy too. But that's a whole other series. We'll talk about that some other time.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
So you alluded a little bit to this, but my next question to you is, as you mentioned, you have a daughter. How do you stay balanced, spending time with your family, time for yourself, etc.? How do you find the time, and what do you do to relax, etc.?
Yeah, well, I'd say that I'll just be completely honest. I don't think I became balanced until she came into my life, and before I was very imbalanced, and I don't make apologies for that, because it is all consuming as an entrepreneur. It is all in. I mean, it's literally 18-hour work days, nonstop. I did that for many, many years, and many people were concerned about my burning out. But now that has a saturation point, right? And so I did that full on for 6-7 years, and partly because I love it. It's my passion. So it's not really work, right? And so there's that. There's something to be said, though, is that with it, where you start losing productivity if you don't start thinking about other things in terms of exercising. And naturally, I'm in decent shape externally, but internally, my stamina wasn't really there. So started working a lot with a trainer. Started learning how to swim, and now I swim every day now. That's been amazing. Just having that dedicated time to go there and actually clear your mind, clear your thinking. I do my best thinking when I'm in the pool sometimes now. And also certainly having a daughter has been incredible in terms of making sure that family is primary. It's first. And she's forced me to become far more effective as an entrepreneur. Before I was sort of with a band and was working nonstop, and I would say that now it's forced me to understand exactly where do I add value to the company, because the areas I don't add as much value anymore, and that's entirely fine. That's exactly, it means that the company's growing. If you're not needed as much, that's great. That means you're doing your job. So it's forced me to really examine where I could dedicate time and how I'm dedicating my time and how I could really be of value to them and also to her, because she's also a startup, or she would argue that I'm her startup.
Yes, that's very interesting. Thank you for sharing that. So Sheldon, thank you so much. So what's next for you? I know you have several patents. I'm sure you have other business ideas. Can you give us a sneak peek, or what's next for you?
Well, I think that one is, we've signed on with a pretty large client in the pharmaceutical space. So bringing our technology to the pharmaceutical sector is very exciting for us. It's a big area of growth. When I sort of think of the three areas of where there's a lot of growing interest and trending, is one is around cloud computing. The two, obviously, a lot of sort of predictive analytics and large data sets. Healthcare is another one, the notion of the quantified self. So those are three major areas, and we're converging in those three areas nicely. So certainly continuing to grow the company is top of mind, but there are other things that I'm seeing that I think is interesting. One in particular is as we, for our own technology platform, are leveraging more and more of cloud computing to do our own elastic processing. One idea is starting to emerge to me is that you could go in there and actually now start to use, I don't know if you're aware of this, you could go in there and literally buy computing time in real time, in sort of these real time markets. You could either buy it in a spot market in Amazon, or you could buy it in a reserved market. And I think that there's an interesting opportunity for marketplace to arise, where you could go in there and sort of trade on compute time. And you could even start thinking about this whole notion of a trading desk around computing time. If you think about the fact that most airline companies, they literally have people in-house. Sonja, like whether it's American Airlines or Southwest or JetBlue or Virgin, They literally have analysts in-house and people in-house that are literally sitting there and buying oil futures to try and manage their fuel costs. So they're buying, oil futures in the commodity exchanges. And I think that it may not be a far-fetched idea is that major companies, Honda, Nike, Apple, Amazon, whoever, companies will literally have people there that are managing all the compute time and the compute costs in these dynamic markets and trading on them. So they actually may have their own trading desks for computing capacity. So that's an area that I'm thinking a little bit about. There are 3 or others I could bore you ad nauseum about if you're interested, but I'm interested in this whole notion of trading compute time.
Awesome. Well, you definitely want to watch.
Right.
So Sheldon, I just want to thank you for being here and sharing your thoughts with Caribbean Innovation Ventures. We greatly appreciate it. Your story will definitely inspire others. And to my Caribbean audience, remember to shoot for the sky, because if you fall, you're going to fall on coconut trees. But if you shoot for coconut trees, you're going to fall on the ground. Thank you.